Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hosts Melanie Johnson and Jenn Foster are the owners of Elite Online Publishing. They're both Wall Street Journal, USA Today best-selling authors. We're really glad you're here because this podcast was designed for you. Meet industry experts that share their secrets and strategies. Get successful results for your business in money, relationships, health, and your life. Each episode is going to inspire you to take action towards reaching your greatness.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today for another great podcast. I'm Melanie Johnson, one of the owners of Elite Online Publishing, and I have my co-host here, Jenn Foster, who is also my business partner. Hey Jenn.
Hey everyone, how's it going today?
Oh man, we are rocking it today. We are going to get into leadership, and leadership is such a broad term, but we really want to get into how to be taking your life from ordinary to extraordinary and living with significance and influence and how to do that. And I've realized I used to always think leadership had to do with your company being a leader of a team. But then as a woman, you're also a leader of your family, right? You're a leader of what your actions are. Also, you can be a leader of your friend group, meaning who you are and what you do. You influence so many people when you step into your leadership role. So we are so fortunate to have Sabrina Lloyd here. She is the author of Stand Alone, How to Be an Extraordinary Leader. And we are going to take a deep dive into how to do that, be an extraordinary leader in your life and affect your family, your friends, and your coworkers. And if you're a business owner, everyone who works for your business. Welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you both.
Great. Well, tell us, Sabrina, a little bit about your background and how you came to write this book.
Yeah. So what's really cool is that I had no intentions of being a leader. My whole life, I studied to become a medical doctor, and I lived in Canada. After I was going to medical school, I came into the United States. I was recruited by a company. And in the business world, if you don't learn about leadership, you will get your ass handed to you. That is what's going to happen. And so through business, I had to start diving into what are the principles of leadership? How do I influence people in a positive way? And Melanie, you said that magical word there of influence. I believe that will make you a good leader. To be a great leader, that the world needs great leaders right now, you have to have influence and responsibility, and being in charge of how you lead your life is incredibly important today. It's a skill. So if you're lacking it, you want to get in leadership environments, and then you want to learn, how do I become a leader and push my life forward instead of just letting life happen to you, which is what's happening to a lot of people today.
So what are the first steps to become a leader? So many of us don't know. We're lost in the weeds. It's, do I have to be like forceful? Do I have to be a bully? Can I be a kind leader? But how do I lead by being kind? So walk us through when you're trying to tell someone, like in your chapters of your book, is how do you step into figuring out what kind of leader you should be?
Yeah. Love this question, because some people are born with this innate ability to lead, like they have charm, they have charisma. And so you see this in children, and then some people can really nurture this. And then they get into these stages where they get into a business and they continue to use their charm and their charisma. You know, what I say to people is these are sometimes the worst leaders, because then you have people that have to learn leadership, right? What we are is we're good followers, we're good learners. And so for me, what I was blessed with was the ability to learn. In my book, I talk about this, and you'll see the first thing you need to do is become self-aware. You need to know yourself. And then you need to surround yourself with other great people so that you can learn and allow yourself to be mentored. So one of the first things I would say is that you have to be a good follower to be a leader. And it sounds counterintuitive, but what's very dangerous is that if you're a person who has influence and you don't allow other people to influence you to continuously get better, where like ego takes over and it's not very healthy. So the best leaders in the world, what I have learned is that they're the best learners. So first thing that you want to do is self-assess, and then start looking at, what is my ability to learn? How can I look at my life and say, this is where I am? this is where I want to go. How do I get there? And you start to lead your life when you're learning through that process.
I like that, because a lot of times people will say, oh, I'm open to learning. And then someone's trying to teach them something and they're like, no, I'm not doing it that way, which they're not open to learning. So it's just that open-mindedness. I think the authenticity, I think you talk about that in your book. Let's talk about authenticity for a minute, because I know for me, it's hard sometimes to be vulnerable and be authentic, but I try.
Yeah, I believe that experience gets us to know certain things, right? And so as you continue to live your life, there are certain things that you're going to be able to move from believing to knowing. And those areas of your knowing is where you're going to be the best leader. And that's when it comes off more authentic, instead of you pretending to be someone that you're not because you read something and you're like, let me now teach this. But I think a lot of us today are really we're almost getting a feeling for when someone's authentic and real, and they are walking they're walking their talk, right? Versus someone who's just speaking generally and really doesn't have the life to back up what they're saying. And that's really what we're looking for today. And really what we're doing is we're looking at experience. And in my book, there's one thing that you can do about learning, but you've got to take that knowledge and you've got to start executing on it. You got to start, I talk about this, be violently aggressive with your execution. A lot of people today, they're dabbling in the water, and this is why they're just getting left so far behind. And today with technology, with change that's happening at such a rapid pace, if you don't get violent in your execution of leadership and what you know you need to do, you're going to get left even further behind.
And that it's really the action takers. It's getting off your butt, even if it's wrong. If you do it wrong, you learn, and then you can redo it and do it again.
Yeah.
I love that, being aggressive about the execution and speed to market. All this new stuff with AI, and it's like jumping on that and figuring out how that can serve your customers and your business to do that. Let's talk about the 7 rules to dominate your business. I'm really curious what those are.
Yeah, so I break them down. Some of them make perfect sense. Some of them are counterintuitive. One of the things that I go overall in the book is that everything is happening for you, and to look at everything as, what did I have to learn from this? But then also, how can you make decisions that are going to put you ahead? So I talk about family. I talk about, especially as a woman, like who you decide to marry. This could make or just destroy you. And so the relationships that you have, are they building relationships or are they destructive relationships? I talk about making sure that your environment is set up properly, because that's ultimately what you get to choose as an individual. And so when I go over these 7 business warrior traits, I'm really getting you to push yourself to think very differently. What I've found in business is that people tell you what sounds nice, and it's just not true. That's not actually what's going on. And so when women come into business and there's a man's club and they know really what it takes, what you have to do is you have to get very open to getting around the right people. Don't look at gender, don't look at age, don't look at color. All those things are designed to make you a victim. And once you start getting into that victim mentality, you're dead.
Yeah, I like how you say that. You still have to be that open-minded, open to learning all of that.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Talk about timing and sequence. Is there a time? And all the things you're saying, by the way, if you're listening and you're like, I'm not a business owner, that all these can be applied to every part of your life. Really, truly think that. So is there a timing and a sequence? Why is that important?
Yeah. So think about this, right? For families, especially like you were talking about, I didn't understand leadership until my income started to get affected by it. But really, we're all affected by leadership in our lives. If you're a mom and you can't lead your family, I assure you that someone else is leading your family. And so you need to learn, what does it take to lead my children, to lead my household, to lead situations. Even when you interact with your teachers, you still need to have some form of leadership over your children's lives to be able to rear them in the best way possible. And so this flows nicely into timing and sequence, because one of the biggest questions I get asked all the time is a lot of women, they make it in business, but they can't push further ahead because of bad timing and sequence. And again, this is a touchy subject because everyone is different and every single person can handle different levels of stress. For me, what I have found is that when I was young, I worked like no one else to be able to build for myself the opportunity to make different decisions as a mother that I would not be able to make had I messed up my sequence. If I had children a little bit sooner, I wouldn't have created the space and then the freedom to make certain decisions. And so I remember being in business and I was in my 20s and people were like, why don't you have kids? Why don't you have kids? And I was like, I want kids, just not right now. And for timing and sequence, I would always look at them and say, are you going to take care of them for me? Because a lot of people think in a relationship, you can have someone help you. My experience is that when you are a woman and you have a child, no one is going to be needed more than you. So timing and sequence matters a tremendous amount. And so what I did was I worked my butt off when I was young. This is why when I meet young people and they're talking about, I want to settle down, I'm like, when you're young, this is when you have the most energy. You go the hardest. You don't mess around. When I meet young people and they're like, I want to travel and see the world. When you're broke and you're traveling around the world, it's not the same experience as when you've built for yourself a business and you have money and you can experience things on a whole different level. So again, it's to each their own. I get that. I understand that. But if you want to live at an extraordinary level, you better get timing and sequence under your belt, because you can do the right thing. If you do it at the wrong time, you will pay a consequence for it. You will pay some sort of price. And so my whole life and the ability to stand alone is to pay that price up front. Always pay the price up front. And then the extraordinary comes after, instead of doing the reverse, which a lot of people are doing right now. You're playing around, you're enjoying too much up front, and you're going to pay for it later on.
I love that advice, especially for young people. My daughter's in college and my nieces. So that's really great advice for them. I'll make sure they listen to this podcast and read your book.
I love that advice too, because I think I didn't have kids till I was in my late 30s. And it seemed like time evaporated during my 20s. I'm like, how can I be 28 already? How can I be 30 already? Like, but I have so much to do and accomplish before that happens. So it does get there. You talk about don't get big and stupid. All right. That's intriguing. So what does that mean? Don't get big and stupid.
I love this. We see this with major companies, right? What happened to Kodak? Some of us grew up in this era of, oh, I'm having a Kodak moment. If you went to someone who is 20 years old and you said, oh, that's a Kodak moment, they would look at you like, what are you even talking about right now? Because they don't even understand that Kodak was the company that was synonymous with taking pictures. There was a person in Kodak that created the digital picture. And when they went to the board to present this idea to them, he was laughed out of the office. And that was the beginning of their demise. And what happened to Kodak in their prime was that they were so big, they thought nothing could ever happen to them. And so they stopped listening to new ideas. They only listened to a certain circle. This happens in other businesses too, where you form a circle of people that you're comfortable with and you only listen to their opinions. And then when someone's new in your business, you don't really give ear to what their ideas are. And what happens is you never know what can kill you. So as you continue to grow, don't get big and stupid. And what stupid means is that you stop learning, right? Because learning is an ongoing thing. And it's just as we age, we start to get old by not doing new things, not pushing ourselves. If you look at a young person, they're going to do anything as much as they can. Like they're jumping around everywhere. We have to hold them back and say, don't do this. But we get very careful. We get very calculated as we age. And that's what happens to businesses too. They get so very careful, so very calculated. There's so much bureaucracy. There's so much red tape. You stop taking calculated risks. And then what happens to you is that you can just go out of business completely. And so this is just awakening up. Take this down to your individual life. Like, where are you not pushing yourself? This could be even in your level of fitness. I remember as I had 3 kids, I just started seeing how fast I was putting on weight, and I started to get comfortable with it. It wasn't until I said to myself, like, listen, I can see how this is going to continue, or I can stop myself and then make different changes, even though it's incredibly uncomfortable. I say this to my team all the time. Every excuse that you have is valid and reasonable. And you don't call it an excuse, right? You say that it's a reason, and your reason is valid and it's logical and it's reasonable, right? When you're a mom, if you ever go to a mom and say, let's work out, she will probably eat you alive. Like, she wants nothing to do with it because we're so stressed out. But what happens is a coach comes into your life and they're not buying into your valid and logical reasons. They call it an excuse, and they will literally drag you to a different level of living. And that's what it means. Don't buy into everything that just makes sense. Get uncomfortable. Big companies have to do this. You as an individual, as you age, have to do this. And you have to constantly keep pushing yourself up, because the moment that you stop doing that, you stop living in an inspired life. You stop being the leader of your own life. And then you buy into other people's stories and excuses. And then all of a sudden, you're not in control of your life. You're not a leader anymore.
That reminds me so much in our industry that we feel like traditional publishers have become dinosaurs. They're not keeping up with technology. They're not seeing, we showed you what an Amazon author page looked earlier, and you're like, how come I didn't know? How come my publisher didn't do that for me? And we see that all the time. And I love that we are really pride ourselves on being innovative and what's new in technology, what's the latest things, how can we apply that? And if you're not, you become like Blockbuster, you become like Kodak. If you're sitting back on your laurels and you're not seeing what is new, what is the technology happening, you constantly have to reevaluate and reinvent yourselves and your company to stay up with these times and do that. And then part of that is being a great leader, right? Part of your thing is to see what's new, what's happening, whether it's with your business or even with your kids, what's going on. After COVID, so many kids started getting depressed. And if you didn't read about that or know about that, maybe you didn't evaluate looking at your kids. Are you okay? And doing that check-in type of thing. So this is
and that actually brings back one of the warrior rules, where I talk about this in the book, and it's the spirit of getting offended. And what I tell you in the book is stop getting offended and start offending. And people are so guarded, but if you don't speak up for what is right, like you don't speak up on behalf of your children, you don't speak up for your own life, you don't speak to what you know is right, and you keep on getting offended and you keep on going into that shell. I talk about this in the book. It's called the cage. Like, you go into this cage and then all of a sudden you're living smaller, and it's very deadly. So what you do is you push out. Start living your life like, I'm here to offend you. If what I'm saying is offending you, I'm not worried about that. I'm here to lead my life, and I can't be so concerned about what you're thinking about me in this moment, because this is my life and I have to push out what it is that I'm looking to create for myself.
I had some things that my younger son went through, and I realized at that moment, I couldn't let him be his own boss, right? Because he was not in a good mental place. And he's, Mom, I don't want to do that. I don't want to try this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to be the big boss leader, Mom. And you don't really get a choice.
Yes.
Because you're not in the space mentally to make these decisions for yourself. So I'm making them for you, and you're under my roof. And so this is what we're doing to get you healthy. Then we got to the phase where he was getting healthy, and he's, hey, I don't want to be treated like a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old anymore. I want to start being my own leader of my own life, Mom. So then having to get that balance of backing off and letting him step into his leadership role of himself. In the meantime, when someone's in bad shape, you got to step up.
Yeah. And good for you for doing that, because I know it's not easy. It's especially like with my kids that are younger, they want everything, and I can afford to give them everything. I just won't. So sometimes when they're asking for something, I know my discipline to say no in that moment is forging a greater character in them. And you know, what I believe today, what leaders need, that's why I add that in addition to influence, let us be responsible. Break down that word responsible. It's my ability to respond instead of reacting to a situation, just like you did in that moment, like step aside and say, wait, like I'm your mother. I'm responsible for your outcome and I'm going to lead what you're going to do next. And that's a beautiful thing.
I love that. Sabrina, tell us where people can go to find you and get more information about where to buy your book.
Yes, thank you. So on Instagram, I am Sabrina Lloyd is my social media handle. So you can check me out there. Would love to hear from you. You can also check out my podcast, Stand Alone. I have been able to have some extraordinary conversations with some leaders around the world. Stand alone is not about being by yourself. It's about being able to do things that are against the grain. Not everyone is thinking this way. And so whenever you meet people that are at the top of what they do, I interview people that are the top of the military, the top people in the healthcare industry, attract that. They don't do things the way everyone does things, and it separates them from the pack. And that's really how you become an extraordinary leader. So thank you for that.
That's
Awesome. We'll put that link up in the show notes.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming today. We really appreciate it. It was very powerful. And remember, if you would like to write a book, we'll make you a #1 bestseller guaranteed. Or if you already have a book out, we can relaunch it for you. Just fill out our author submission form and we'll see if we're a good fit for each other. We'll see you next time. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.